It is important that founders know that there are risks out there. And what was more shocking to me is I thought there can't be that many out there. But in a closed WhatsApp group of founders, I mentioned it, and 3 or 4 other people stepped forward and said they'd had, not with the same people, but they'd had something similar. And so that suggests that the investment landscape / fraudulent landscape is getting more complex. It's getting more professional, dare I say, for want of a better word. So you need to be, when people tell founders to go and check where the funds have come from, I don't care if you are too nervous, take whatever you need to do and go check where those funds are coming from. You need to be in control of that relationship as much as they're in control.
No Bullshit Talks is a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. There's too much bullshit out there, especially when it comes to business. This podcast aims to highlight what's true and what's not in the world of entrepreneurship, bringing you honest and raw conversations about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship. Each week, my guest will be a high-performing entrepreneur sharing the ups and downs of their journey and helping you prepare for the road ahead, while providing you with actionable insights and absolute gems of knowledge. Stay tuned as I introduce this week's guest. Welcome, Sara, to No Bullshit Talks.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I really love everything that you're about.
Oh, well, that's a nice way to start that. I'm just going to click that and put that on the front of the podcast. No, I love that. And I think it's nice when you feel like that, because we connected and took a while for us to meet, and then you just get on, and then you know that they're the right sort of people for you, and you find who your people are. I feel like that.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important that you just get to the crux of the matter. The crux of, doing business honourably, ethically, and
bullshit.
No bullshit. Exactly.
I feel like that. And I feel like, it's so obvious with my branding, like what I'm about and how I do business. And some people hate it, and that's okay. That's not you. And some people love it. And so I'm trying to attract all the people who do love it and come vibe with me and just have a, much more open, honest, frank conversation. And easy. So there you go. And that's what this is about.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I'd love for you to, I guess, introduce yourself to the audience, those who don't know you, and say a bit about what we do.
Yeah, so my name's Sara. I am an entrepreneur. I like innovation, and I also talk quite frequently. A lot, as some would say. So I am a serial founder, 3 companies in, and now working with an exited founder to look at her portfolio and her exciting stuff that she's doing. And those businesses have been quite different, from service orientated to product and very complex business models. But they've all added something, and they've all challenged me in different ways, which is really exciting.
Oh, I love this. So first of all, 3 times founder, 3 different businesses. Can we hear a little bit about each one and, what happened there?
So I started my sort of entrepreneurial, shall we say, mindset thought processes probably fairly young, but not built in a traditional format. So not about I wasn't out there selling sweets at 13 or something. I actually had a really bad issue with bullying at 13. Aww. Knocked me out of school, and that built resilience in me. So I was like, I've got to do something, and I want to be the master of my own destiny, so to speak, in that sense. So my first business started out as an event management company. Then you quickly realise, or I quickly realised, that there is a process to that. And once you know the process, you can apply that to an event of 5 or 5,000. Arguably, the process only modifies slightly. So it lost my interest very quickly.
Oh, you need to tell me that process, because I'm in the middle of running a lot of events, and I could really do with that process.
So I morphed that, pivoted in the new way.
Oh, yeah.
Pivoted. Yes, I pivoted into more around brand, cultural insight, and I moved the agency out to sub-Saharan Africa. So based out of Nairobi, working sub-Saharan Africa and the Gulf, B2B, B2C, and just really embracing a different culture. And it was fabulous. I really loved it.
That's insane. You're like, okay, so this events industry is too easy. I'm just going to switch continents and do something completely different out there.
Pretty much. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah, it sounds very, very sort of gung-ho, but I guess So I did get married very early. But we didn't have children. We didn't have anything tying us. And I think one of my big advice to people out there is to embrace these opportunities. If you've nothing tying you, embrace culture, because culture is going to open your eyes in ways that nothing else can. No course, no university program. Go stick yourself in somewhere different, totally different, and you'll learn so much.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. I then, through a situation, had to come back to the UK. Didn't want to. Came back kicking and screaming. And the second business was called The Brand Tailors. And actually, looking back, it was more of a consultancy driven. So predominantly me. And then I would just bring people in as and when. And that worked at a time, that was the end of 2008. So it's the recession, a different recession. So it was a recessional environment. Brand and marketing wasn't at the forefront of everybody's minds because they were trying to cost cut. So it was just a really evolutionary model for me to sort of go stick myself in and then adapt to client needs, and it worked. Then in 2011, my dad died, and during this rather difficult situation and difficult time, I found myself in a hospital room with him. He had cancer, and anyone who's experienced any member of family with cancer, there's a lot of time driven in hospital. You spend a lot of time there. So there was a vending machine with all the rubbish in, and there's a poster next to it saying diabetes and obesity kill. So my branding brain kicks in as I'm running up and down the wards and getting, just passing time. And I thought, that's ridiculous. We're getting people into the hospitals through ill health, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and we welcome them with a Mars bar and a Coke. Not good.
No.
Not good at all. And actually, I had had to go to A&E recently. It hasn't changed still. Couldn't even get any water in the vending machine. So, what? Could we have made a great deal of progress? Anyway, that led me to my third company, which was started in 2013, Healthy Nibbles, and it started as a really simple concept: put healthy food in vending machines. Now, the business model around that, getting into procurement and all of those sorts of things, was incredibly challenging, way more than I anticipated. So we had to do different markets, different routes in. By the time I left that business last year, we were actually comprised of 4 different elements. So we had automated retail, snap boxes, we had a food service concierge, which was essentially an elevated wholesale, and we had a data and insights platform. So from branding to something that was very complex, different business models for each of those sections, different consumer groups for each of those sections, and very challenging.
So that's kind of incredible. Those 3 companies are all different, and but you've pivoted into something completely different. But I want to talk about, I guess, the last company, because that was the one that I don't want to say broke you, I guess, because it was actually, I mean, that's the one that broke you, let's say that then, and, kind of put you on a different path. But it was also arguably the most successful one, which is, again, what's interesting, because I feel like entrepreneurs out there are fighting so hard to A, get investment, B, get this like big success story, but it's almost never what it appears to be, and it always comes with added stress. So I would love for you to share as much as you're allowed to and comfortable sharing about what happened with the last company.
So I can come on to business model later and how it was very complicated and things like that, and the different ways we approached it. But ultimately, going for our Series A funding round, even though we were working with a top-tier legal company, we managed to find fraudulent investors. So shareholders agreement signed, everything apart from the share certificate signed, no money came. And unfortunately, we actually found that they've done that to about 30 other companies around the world. And those companies are in various stages of, some have gone under in a similar way, some are struggling to make ends meet. But it's had a really damaging effect, and they were going and specifically targeting Series A founders. So it was very premeditated, it wasn't a one-off, and it was essentially organised crime.
So what is their aim? Like, so they're not giving away any money. And how does a scam work?
So for this, based on the intelligence agencies that we've spoken to, they are getting the startups or the scale-ups all with exclusivity in place, raising their funds, and it is expected that those funds will be raised and not passed on to the founders. So if you took 10 founders, we're all raising 3 million, that's 30 million. Yeah. But instead of that 30 million coming from their LPs to them, to then to us, it's stopping at them and being split with that group of individuals.
Oh my God.
So it's worth their time, their effort in nurturing those relationships, because we went through all of those questions. They've been on the phone to me. They've spoken to me frequently. They've engaged with my investors. I've got some really, really good investors, or had at the time, some very, very good investors. So they've done all of that. They've passed all the due diligence. I've got their passports. I've got all of those things. This is not novice investment. This was, I knew what I was doing, and I had, where I didn't know, I had people that did. And
so if you have their passports and everything, were they fraudulent? Like, how does it?
We don't know.
That's still going on under investigation. Oh my gosh, I feel like this has got to be a Netflix drama. So Netflix, someone from Netflix, if you're watching, come sign this up, because I would watch this. Yeah, exactly. And please, exactly. So please pay a nice hefty fee. We'll all watch it and give their money back, because I mean, it is, and actually founders need to know this. Oh my God, because so many people are out there looking for money and looking for investment, and wow.
And I've been there, and you get desperate. I've been there. I've chosen the wrong investors in the past, early stage, where I've fallen out with those investors, and they've been problematic shareholders then. And that's at seed stage. I have had good investors that connect me to people that had one who's an absolute dream, who got me a personal coach for the entire duration and is working with me. It was amazing, because she helped me articulate what I was trying to do. She helped me advance my skill set. And she was just integral to how I grew as a founder. So I've had good, bad, and they were definitely the ugly. And it is important that founders know that there are risks out there. And what was more shocking to me is I thought there can't be that many out there. But in a closed WhatsApp group of founders, I mentioned it, and 3 or 4 other people stepped forward and said they'd had, not with the same people, but they'd had something similar. And so that suggests that the investment landscape, stroke fraudulent landscape, is getting more complex. It's getting more professional, dare I say, for want of a better word. So you need to be, when people tell founders to go and check where the funds have come from, I don't care if you are too nervous, take whatever you need to do and go check where those funds are coming from. You need to be in control of that relationship as much as they're in control. And I know VCs sometimes play that power trip, but actually you're in a partnership. It's akin to getting married for 7 years. You know, you need to make sure it's going to work, and you need to trust them. And they're never going to have 100% of your best interests at heart, because ultimately they're in the business of making money. Yeah. But a good VC or a good family office will make sure that they scale with you and they support you, because ultimately your success is their success. So there's a lot to be said for being more vigilant. And I think more so as well with women, I think we can be too trusting sometimes.
100%.
Sometimes our guts kick in and we're like, yes. But sometimes we can be too trusting. And I think we need to actually look beyond that and get support around us.
I'm also just terrified for every company out there. Like, imagine working your butt off, achieving your dream, and then this is what happens. And like you said, it's getting probably even more sophisticated now. They've got AI.
I think that's it.
Like with AI, it's like you can have phone calls with people. You can have you can have video calls, and you think it's someone on the other end of the line. Like, you don't know. There's all these things that have been faked now. Like, you could be on the whole panel with Dragon's Den and then believe it's them, like, and be like, oh my God, these guys are investing into my company, and have no idea. They could send over fraudulent papers and it'll all be like that. And this is actually crazy. And this is, what other advice, if you could offer any, to companies out there who are going through, whether it's Series A or whatever round it is, and they're going through funding, what other checks can they do? What other due diligence is there?
Do you know, I don't know if we could have done any more than we did. We had top tier legal firm, and I'm talking tens of thousands of pounds billing level.
They couldn't see it.
They couldn't. We had passports, we had proof of addresses, we had bank statements, we had contracts with, not necessarily their LPs, but we had contracts with some of their assets. We had 200 WhatsApp messages in total over the period of time. Letters to our suppliers promising that if we put in an exceptionally large order, they would guarantee it. You name it.
So your suppliers are getting screwed over as well, because they're
had
like...
we acted on it, yes, but we didn't.
My
because
God.
Healthy Nibbles was built on our relationship with suppliers. And yes, towards the end, we were late paying, but that's because we closed the company. But for the rest of that 10-year tenure, we grew with our suppliers. And so many of our suppliers started with us as the sole customer and then ended up being listed in major wholesalers. So we were never going to put anybody else at risk. They told us to hire. So when you go in and you've got investment and you're excited about, I'm going to hire XYZ, we had that plan. We actually had people in place and we were just waiting for the contracts, and they said, just go ahead. We'll cover it. Now, my nervousness to do that, partially back to, dare I say it, harkening back to grandparents, you've no cash until you've got your cash in your hand. That's it. Going back, don't go on credit, just cash in the hand. That's the way you've got to operate. They were old school, but actually that stood us in good stead for not having an army of staff to grow the business that was actually never going to grow, because they were never actually going to put the money in. So I think what you can do, I think obviously if you're going for some of these big ventures, Octopus are out there, True are out there, these big, large VCs, they've got the reputation. So that's great. But if you are going for something that doesn't have a huge track record, and bearing in mind, I did PitchBook referencing as well. So on PitchBook, you can see all the investments every fund has made, and you can get contacts to the actual companies. So they're on PitchBook with investments that didn't actually go through. So it's not to be trusted. Don't take everything at face value. So the big thing, the thread, shall we say, that unraveled the whole experience is after a number of delays of where's the funding, where's the money? Money hasn't hit my bank account yet. I then reached out to one of the companies that was actually in PitchBook as having received 30 million from them. And I rang I actually linked in the founder. I said, we're going to be in the same portfolio. Had to think of an excuse to reach out. Can we talk? Sort of thing. And within half an hour, I had them on the phone, and I was at home, and I said to my husband, I said, this is really, really bad or really, really good one way, because nobody from a complete stranger suddenly finds time for the CEO and the chairman to be with you in 30 minutes.
No, exactly. Unless either they're looking at you thinking, you're the most amazing person in the world, which they might have been, but or it's like, we need to help this person right now, which is great that they did that though, because they could have also just ignored it and be like, well, this is, their issue. I can't deal with the stress anymore, because some people might have done. They might have been so, but thanks to that person, and thanks to you doing that, absolutely, you've saved a lot of people.
And I think for me, why I didn't reach out to them first was that lack of self-confidence, actually, is we're raising 3 million, they've raised 30. Oh, I don't want to upset the Series Bs or whatever. And you think, oh, should I go speak to them? Actually, just bite the bullet and do everything, because you can't afford not to be, because it cost us our business. And my husband was employed in the same company. So we went from salaried to zero salary. everything, any founder will know the sacrifices you make anyway, delayed holidays and all of that sort of stuff. And for my daughter, mum's traveling up and down the country like a yo-yo. You make a lot of sacrifices to do what you do, and to have it suddenly swept under you. I mean, putting it in perspective, as a business, we just passed the 1 million. We were due to get be 10 million in revenue, which would have been this year. So we're not small.
Yeah.
So I would say just do every ounce of check, and don't leave it too late, because obviously funding rounds are taking so long now anyway. That's been a massive change anyway, and a shift over 2 or 3 years. Yeah. They're taking longer and longer. So plan. Cash is king. You'll hear it when you first launch a company. It's no different. It's true. It's absolutely true. And that's what, yeah.
Would you also say that, and this is so hard if you're like an ambitious founder, would you also say that taking your time is actually a good thing here? Because I feel like you saying, they're saying, go ahead, hire these people, or like, put in this bulk order with a supplier. Had you have done that, and you would have, with a 3 million investment, you would have hired some A players too. You'd have hired some people on big salaries, a lot of them, and you'd been in further debt and either screwing over those people who are employees or who need their hard-earned cash too, and the suppliers in the mix. You'd have been in a lot worse situation with a lot more people hurt. And I know that I probably would have been in that, because I'm a massive go-getter, right? And I'm excited. I'm like, right, they said go. I believe them. Let's do it. Let's do this, and this, and let's get going. And I feel like a lot of other people would do that. Would you say actually, like you said, wait until that cash is in the bank and everything's through and just slow it right down?
100%. And I think, coming back to everything that you stand for, let's cut the crap about what's going on in the business world and what's going on as a startup. Stop the hustle. Yes, the hustle needs to exist. The drive, the grit, the determination, but it's not hustle, is that? That's actually grit, perseverance, and determination. That's what you need. You don't need the hustle, because if you've got a good business, starting it, slowing it down for 3 months is not going to turn away that best investor. Slowing it down for 12 months isn't, if you've got a narrative to back it up. And this comes at a sort of, I would say, a reflective time where I've thought, what, if you want to work with a really, really good investor, it is a bit like a marriage. Somebody will wait for you if that's the case. And yes, they get a lot of deals through the door, but actually a good deal they won't let up. And if you've got a strong narrative behind it, they're not going to move. And I think it's up to you as a founder to protect those around you. You are a leader, so act like it. And I remember going through the Goldman Sachs course, and one of the guys said, so how many in here think of yourself as a leader? And hardly anyone did.
Really?
So in a room full of high growth startups, all of them minimum of 250k turnover, hardly any of them thought of themselves as an actual strong leader that can go on and lead a team.
You need 5 members of staff in your team as well for that. And because I, as I said, I almost did it, right? And it wasn't the right time. And so I looked, it was like 250k turnover and 5 members of staff in your team or something. So at that stage, you're running a decent business, but you've got 5 people in your team. So by definition, you should be a leader. I guess the question is, are you a manager / leader? And the fact that they've had the boldness to apply for a course by Goldman Sachs says they consider themselves to be a certain pedigree, but yet...
But I think we're missing, I think we've got entrepreneurship wrong. I really do. Because I don't think we look at the fundamentals of business. To be a leader, you need to look after the people that are around you. You need to be worthy of being followed. It's not just good enough to be some Silicon Valley face, dare I say it, or whatever equivalent that we've got over here, but it's not good enough to just be that face of, I've got a startup. You need to be able to follow through with your actions, with governance, with everything that you're doing to show that you've got their back. But equally, I know a lot of entrepreneurships don't have kids around, because that is usually a blocker. But actually, when you've had a child, you can see that, you can see a similarity between discipline. Okay, my daughter doesn't like being disciplined, but she knows it comes from a position of love. And likewise, if you've got a team and you're leading a team, if they've done something wrong, to be able to correct them, but they know that it's coming from a position of trust, of safety, of supporting their health. And I'm not on about the mamby-pamby mental health element. I'm on about that you're doing it from a position of looking after that person, helping iron out differences. Then that's going to be respected. And we need to actually get to the grips of that before we go gung-ho and, you know, jump on the ride of a startup and then go, oh crap, now what do we do when we've got 100 people around us, and how do we lead them and how do we look after them?
I think that's it though. I think people do just want to jump on that roundabout, because it's like, I say roundabout, I think, because you were saying, I wonder what the equivalent is here. And I thought Silicon Roundabout, how like Shoreditch, like, you know, Old Street is the kind of our equivalent. But it is also like a roundabout, this whole roller coaster of entrepreneurship that we kind of go through. And I think that people want to ride those highs of the roller coaster, and, you know, they haven't prepared for what happens in the lows. And I think that's the problem. They don't actually know how to handle it. No one's prepared. No one realizes all these people. And like you said, when you're excited, like, come join us on this journey. But then it's like, well, how do I lead? And if you haven't done the boring fundamentals, then it's like, well, you know, you don't know what your values are. You don't know where you're going. And I think that's it. I think I see this all the time. And even what I do, and I help coach other entrepreneurs and mentor people, and I go, okay, so show me your business plan. Like, we haven't made one. And I would say most people I speak to haven't made a business plan. I know that it's kind of boring and it seems old school, and it's like, it's not very modern day entrepreneurship tech vibes, is it? But how do you know, like, what to do? Or how do you know what success looks like? How do you know what your goals are like? What are you measuring it against? How do you know all this stuff? It doesn't have to be in a old school templated business plan, but you need to know the stuff that goes in a business plan. It's there for a reason. And so for me, I think people are so excited to just get stuck into the fun bits of running a business, and they forget all the boring stuff and think it's irrelevant, but actually it's so important.
100%. And we've over glamorized it to such an extent that I think people are forgetting the fundamentals, that actually, and that causes more hurt down the line. You can overhire, so then you've got your layoffs. You know, you can have the wrong supplier relationship, so you're ditching them. But actually, one thing we did do with Health and Nibbles is we took the company through B Corp and won numerous awards for sustainability and impact. But actually, what was highlighted in that approach is not the awards, but actually, how are you impacting your entire ecosystem? So not just your suppliers, but your suppliers. What about your local community? So for us, we paid real living wage, which was about, whatever the difference is, 20% higher than the minimum wage in our local area. So we're one of the higher employee groups. I think it's about looking at the impact you can have, everything about it, rather than just sitting down and saying, I want to develop the next app that does X. It's, well, why? What for? And what good are you going to do that's going to come out of that experience? And it doesn't need to be an ESG good.
No.
It can be wealth creation, but it shouldn't be wealth creation just for the founders. It should be, how do you bring that into, can you bring community groups out of poverty? Can you offer apprenticeships to underprivileged? You know, what can you do to leave some good behind the trail of highs and lows that you're going to go through?
Yeah, and I think that if you are doing something for a higher purpose, it actually makes it so much easier to do business, I feel like, because the highs and lows are tough. Like, you know, that rocky journey is not easy. And I feel like there are some people who are meant to be entrepreneurs and some who aren't. I do think I am meant for entrepreneurship and I can handle it, but it's still not fun. Like, even doing it after
it isn't.
15 years later, I'm still like, okay, I'd prefer a lot more highs and a lot fewer lows, please. But, you know, like, you can't always control it. And I think that, like, the fact that I know that I'm in it for a higher purpose, I'm trying to create a healthy environment. Like, we're also paying London living wage, and, you know, that's something we felt was really important. And, you know, having people to enjoy their environment. Now our team's fully flexible. They work wherever they want, whatever hours they want. They've never been micromanaged. It's all about outcomes, and it's all about listening to them. And the same as what I'm doing with Knobs, right? The club that I'm building, I'm consistently asking them what they want, what they need. And that's the biggest pet peeve I had. And it's the reason I started the club, because for other members clubs that I've seen, it has been about making money for the founders. It has all been about how can I drive membership up? How can I get them to join and make as much money for me? But I don't care if they get any value out of it. And I'm like, okay, so I haven't got anything out of this membership. Oh, that's your fault. You need to put more effort into it. And they have no care. And it's the same in business. It's like an employee will come to them and go, I'm actually really unhappy here. Or like, I'm not able to do my work because, I feel really not valued. Well, that's your fault. Maybe work harder. It's the same thing. Imagine doing that to employees. So for me, it's that sort of thing. And having a higher purpose makes it all worthwhile, because even if you're not making the money that you feel that you could be one day, if you're helping impact someone else in a positive way, or you're helping drive change for the bigger picture, then you're working towards something amazing. And I feel like I have to believe that if you are doing that, it's inevitable that you will make money eventually, and good things will come to those who are doing the right thing. So I think that for me, I find that a lot easier to deal with, like having that higher purpose. And I really do think that, but those who go into business having some sort of higher purpose are just much happier and more fulfilled.
I think they should be. I think it should be a prerequisite.
It should be plainly,
you should have to be able to contribute to society.
That's a good rule. Like, I feel like it should be a good rule. Like, I feel like, look how when countries decide whether you're allowed in their country, they want to see if you can contribute to the economy and society, right? So if you're going to start up another business, then why should there be another business that just sucks energy and stuff from other people that you have to maybe contribute positively? I like that.
Because your governance.
That's what I was going to say. Let's take that. I love it. That's brilliant. But okay, so I feel like you've had a lot of experience there, and I guess that could have put you off business for life. And it has made you shift a little bit. But what you do now, you're still very much working with founders, and you're still very much about entrepreneurship. So let's talk about what you do now and how it's different. We'll say
very, very different. I knew that it would have to be. It would have to be something special, because all I've ever done is work for myself, and I'm now working alongside an exited founder, and she is phenomenal. She is bold. She is confident. Never mention the word imposter syndrome to her, because she does think you need to get off your ass and get on with it. Yep. She is not afraid to try things new, and I think that is why we connect, because I think there is just a really complementary way of working. Mm-hmm. So my role now with her is to look at her investments, the startups that she wants to do. She's exited, so she's been in many of the positions that we would hope to be in the future. And she's now going through chapter 2, and I'm the chapter 2 assistant, I guess. So really just looking at how that plays out in terms of what investments, what acquisitions, and the various different businesses that she would like to start, and how they fit together or don't, as the case may be quite often. And just working with her alongside this sort of evolution of her chapter 2, but it's actually becoming my chapter 2 as well, which is really interesting.
It's like born again kind of feeling.
Strange, very strange.
I can't imagine it, because obviously I've worked for myself as well for God knows how long.
If you'd have asked me 6 months ago, well, no, I've got to say that because I've been working with her 6 months. Okay, if you'd have asked me 8 months ago if I would ever work for somebody else, it would have been a no.
Yeah.
When I was with Healthy Nibbles, because obviously I've done businesses since I was 19.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything else other than to run a business, whether it's as an independent. But I felt that I wanted to be challenged in a different way. And I think that's another reason that it works, is because I'm learning, and every single day is different. There's no routine to it. There's a lot of education. I'm learning about sectors that I had no idea about, that's come from her world. And I'm also learning about new sectors where she's had a business idea and she goes, oh, what about this? And she'll literally, that is a spark of her business idea. She'll send me a message. Have we thought about this? And some of them float, some of them don't. But it's interesting. It's really interesting. And I'm only 6 months in. So, and I'm also studying, just completed actually, VC and investment strategies.
Oh, wow.
So really getting into that. I am hoping to get onto a master's, which I find out in a week. Good luck. So that's quite exciting. And I also do quite a lot of my own content as well. Yeah. So I've built up a community in the 6-7 months actually, when I needed a channel to put all my Health and Nibbles content. Like, this is what I think. What do I do? What do I do with all this content? What do I think about having businesses with impact? So I started doing content around that, and that's another channel, another output or a flow through for my mind's wandering.
I think it's needed. I think all of us need to be content creators, and we all are content creators in some sort of way. And I think honing in on that to see what's the best way to do it is beneficial for everyone. I mean, like, I didn't like being called a content creator, but I'm very much a content creator. And I was like, even this sort of thing, like, I love doing this podcast because I realized I was meeting interesting people all the time and having incredible conversations. And I was like, well, the world needs to hear these conversations. They can learn from it too. And that's all it is. And I definitely want to talk about that in a minute, but I would love to hear more about your role at the moment, because you're looking at all these companies to acquire and various different things about business. And I want to know, I guess, what is it that you're looking for? Like, what are because I feel like that's something people want to know, right? As a business owner, you want to be like, well, how do I stand out? What makes me attractive? What are you looking for when you're deciding who to buy, and you know, what are the red flags that you look for? Because I feel like this is a good insight.
Yeah. So I would say we're not as established as a family office. She's not at that stage yet, and whether that's even a sense of her direction. So I would say we're not as formal as that is concerned. So it's very much relationship and gut and a lot of those things. But once you get through that, don't underestimate the level of due diligence. And I think that is something that I do see with people that present to us. And also I've seen it in the beyond this role, is if you are not an over preparer, you probably won't get your deal done as quickly and as effectively. So one thing that I did, I didn't have to raise for the first 2 companies. Obviously, with Health and Nibbles, I had multiple raises. And I'm seeing it now with how I view a founder. If you've done all your basic homework, so a really good deal room, all of your contracts are in position, you know, your governance, you've thought about what you're doing, you know how you're going to spend the money, you know what you want to achieve out of something, then that goes a million miles to actually giving those investor conversations confidence to continue to pursue. And interestingly, doing this VC course, you know, if you're speaking to an associate of a fund, they're going to speak to hundreds. And then they have got to go pitch to their partner. So give them something exciting, for goodness sake. You know, don't expect them to do all the hard work. So one thing that I've done previously, and one thing that, again, I see some flaws coming up, is, write a 1-paragraph intro of your company, write a 1-pager, do something think about an individual. They are audio, they're visual, or they like writing. So provide something for everybody so that they can get a really good understanding of your business in a way that suits them, rather than you putting that on them by giving them a 40-page pitch deck when you've been told to keep it in 10 pages or whatever. But I also think deal rooms are really crucial. Really, really crucial. And even if you are not going into, so obviously when we were going into the Series A, we actually paid for a service, and you can get a really, really good service. But even if you're at sort of the seed stage and pre-seed, you can still create a deal room in Google. You don't have to go spend a fortune. It's not the best, but it's workable, and somebody would appreciate that. And I think it's that art of responding. So if we ask a question, if you're going to take a week, 2 weeks to get back to me, and this is very relevant to anyone raising money from family offices. I think family offices, and this is a study of about 3 of them, so by no means extensive, but I think they're quite emotive. And certainly, if you don't capture their attention at the point that you're talking to them, if you come back to them 3 weeks later with something that you've prepped since your last conversation, they've probably moved up.
Yeah. So I think that's ration. Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. It just made me start thinking about all the people who are in our club and our network who are looking for funding at the moment, and a lot of them we recommend seed legals too, because they're so comprehensive with everything, and they have kind of everything all under one kind of roof. And I think they're really great for people who, like I said, don't want to spend $10,000 or pounds of, on legal fees. They can make your cap tables, they can put the contracts in place, and I think their team's really good. So I think that's a good cost-effective solution. I think just having a team who's got your back and can give you that security, because it's so daunting and it's a lot of money. And if you don't understand contract law, and even if you do, like you said, you had a legal team who still missed a few things, you can just lose millions and millions, and just everything you've ever worked for just goes down the drain with one little clause, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, I think you do need to, but I also think, again, I feel it comes back to the role of entrepreneur. Yes, you need your experts around you, absolutely. But you also need to take ownership of that. So what you don't know about basic contracts, what you don't know about basic term sheets, what you don't know about finances. I hate financial modelling with a passion. And every time I've got to do any financial modelling, I have to sit down with a coffee, I have to prep myself. I procrastinate for hours because I hate it. But you need to know your numbers, and there's no excuse for you standing in front of any investor and not knowing your numbers off by heart.
Yeah, and I think if you've ever seen Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, that's a massive pet peeve for them. If you don't know your numbers, then you're not prepared. How on earth, like you said earlier, investors want to help you, but at the end of the day, they're investing for selfish reasons. They want to make money. So if you don't know how much money they're going to make, they're not going to have confidence in you. But if they're saying, right, in 5 years' time, what am I going to make and how and where's the money coming from? You're like, boom, 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 boom. They're like, okay, I can have a conversation with you because you've actually taken this seriously. But if you're like, oh, we're doing quite well and it's this and it's this, and you've seen some of the shocking ones on Dragon's Den, and I really remember one guy, and they were like, what are you going to do with the money? And he was like, I'm going to get an office in the Shard. And they were like, sorry, what? And they were like, why exactly? And they're like, oh, it costs £10,000 a month. And they're like, sorry, and why is that good? Because it just looks good. And I just think it needs to look good. Everyone was like, is this guy for real? Is he trolling? But there are some people out there who think that they would do that. And it's just ridiculous. And obviously these people aren't going to get funding. But and I'm guessing the people who are watching this or listening to this on the podcast are not going to do that because they're listening to things like this, trying to educate themselves, and I'd like to hope that they're taking their business a little bit more seriously. So, but yeah, I think that it's so important. And, I guess I'd love to ask you, if you had to give advice for those who are seeking funding right now and need to give your top 3 tips for them, what would they be right now?
They're going to be so boring. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry to say this, but they're going to be so boring. It's going to be governance. Know everything that you need to know for governance. If you're stuck, go to the IOD's website.
Okay.
Because it goes through all the legal requirements of you as a director of a company. And I think too many startups forget that they are entering into a legal set of obligations. I think know your numbers, because there's literally zero excuse, and be prepared. And take your time and remember that they are as if you're choosing a partner for life.
I think,
or a partner for 7 years, dare I say, 7-8 years, but
I feel like it's age-old advice. That's timeless advice, right? No, exactly. And I just think that with tech and everything at the moment, everyone's so eager to find a new innovative way of doing things, but actually look, the old school way is just as good. And it just shows you that, look at those businesses, they're still here today doing those sort of things. And if it is boring, then go get a legal advisor and go get a financial advisor and let them do the due diligence, and you can just sit back and take your time and let them do it. But you shouldn't skip on that just because it's not the glamorous parts of it. And I think that's the problem.
You need to know your numbers, even in the early days, I worked with somebody to help me do a financial model. And I also trialed EY. I've got a solution for young companies. VCs hate it. For me, it was the perfect introduction to financial modeling, because you put all your data in, it spits out an Excel spreadsheet. doesn't spit it out with formulas, hence why VCs hate it, because they can't wiggle around with it, wiggle around with the data. But it does get you into that mindset and that flow of how you've got to think about it. But there's, even working with a consultant, it's still your responsibility. And I think that is really, really crucial. And I think also bringing everybody on board, you know, when, I don't know how many people have had this conversation, but I seem to get asked it a lot. I don't know if people are planning, but they used to go, what happens if you get hit by a boss? That whole sort of business continuity, key man insurance, all of that sort of stuff. But actually it's so crucial, is actually what happens if you are struck down ill? What happens if something happens?
A pandemic?
A death in the family. Well, it doesn't matter what the thing is. It's what happens if something happens and you're taken out of the business. Can your business survive? Because if not, it's not a company, basically. It's just you. And just deal with that. And I think knowing how funds look at it puts a different slant. So as I say, I'm doing this course on venture capital and investment strategies. Not because I particularly love financial modelling and want to ever force that on me again, but because it gives me an understanding of how VCs are thinking from having seen all of this education coming at it from the other side, speaking to a VC every single week with, you know, being coached through this set of courses. But it just shows what they're having to deal with and how you then need to pitch your business into that, which I think is really key.
So I feel like, you know, we've talked a lot about business and all that stuff, but you were mentioning earlier about content and about how, I guess, you started doing a lot of content. You've got your own newsletter. You've been using that as an outlet, whether it's, I guess, to vent, but also to educate. I think a lot of people at the moment are looking at content, whether they're making content themselves and they want to build on it or they're thinking about it. Like, how has your content journey been going?
Probably not as formulaic as it should do. If you think about it from a brand perspective, certainly with my background in branding, it probably undermines that. I think initially with Health and Nibbles, I had a really, really strong content and we had a purpose. So it was change the behaviours of workplace wellness, business of impact, and that was it. And when I didn't need to do that anymore, I still felt that writing bug and that need to sort of communicate. But also I felt that for whatever point my career was going to evolve and whatever journey that was going to open up into, I still needed to be able to share. And the amount of times that people would still ask me for my advice or ask me questions that I thought, do you know, I can fashion something that talks through my journey at the points where I'm able and willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because for the first probably 5-6 months after the business, the last thing I wanted to do was talk about a failed investment round. Women get enough stick as it is, and we get less than 2% funding from VCs. We all know the statistics. I am fed up of incubators crawling left, right and centre all over it. We just need to get cash flowing.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go get dragged into that sort of storytelling. But at the same time, I felt that what happens when you fail, because to me it did feel like a failure. I've had a million people say, well, it wasn't a failure, it wasn't your fault, but it still, in my mind, was a failure.
Yeah.
So what happens when you fail? And I thought, gosh, we don't actually talk about that as entrepreneurs, because we put this golden tint over everything. The Silicon Valley sparkles. It's a bit like fairy dust. And we don't celebrate it in the same way over here as well. So culturally, actually, whereas we do liken ourselves to the other side of the pond in terms of the startup ecosystem, we don't react in the same way when a business closes. Yeah. It's like, you've done something wrong, what have you done? Yeah. Never going to go near you again.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share elements of that. I also am still passionate about the impact of health and well-being, and how that we're increasing our health and well-being because we're becoming more knowledgeable, but actually that's opening up to how long we're in the workplace for. It's opening up to how employees get the best out of people. And I'm also, haven't called it this, but exactly what you're saying, knobs around the impact side, I'm absolutely fed up of the rubbish that is out there. Of we're an impact-driven business, but actually behind the scenes we're doing something and we're trading with somebody who's actually damaging something in the process. So I created something called Well Purposed, only because I wanted a name for it, and it really purpose-driven and the whole health and well-being side of it. I launched a newsletter at the start of the year just as an outlet, so I just do twice a month. It's up to about 2,500 subscribers, so I really think that's not bad to say that I've not marketed it and I'm not selling a product. I mean, that's another thing that I still haven't commercialized it. I don't know whether I'll ever commercialize it. I'm just being an open book about my journey, because I hope that in some way that will resonate with other people. And I do that about health and well-being, because I think sometimes we go in there like, you need to be doing this, and this. But actually, if you thought about the person that's starting here, because if you haven't, it doesn't matter what your journey is going to be. You've got to start where people are ready to start. And then I got into the swing of posting 5 days a week. And I have grown a lot in terms of the followers, definitely. I then had an operation a few months ago, so got out of the swing, and now I'm actually just going back into it, and I'm finding my flow. But I haven't got the, shall we say, the content, sense of direction and brand, other than I just want to be an open book about my journey and help others.
But I think that's what people like. And that's what my content is, isn't it? And my content usually does quite well in terms of engagement, because I'm just being real and I'm just talking about the things that most other people aren't talking about. I think when you scroll through your feed and you see the same stuff over and over again, the chiseled wins and bragging about how much money they're making, or the same regurgitated quotes or whatever it is, and then you see one of ours and it's someone being real and someone being raw and honest, then it's all like, oh, I might stop and actually read this. It's actually different. And I think that's why, and it resonates with a lot of people. But your numbers are great. And I know that we're being really honest, and you're saying 2,500, and other people are going, oh, I'm going at 10,000 a day or something stupid. But where are you mainly posting your content for your newsletter? And, I'd love for other people to work out how to build.
Well, at the moment, I am only doing LinkedIn. Yeah. And I am just in the process of doing a sort of couple of page website that I will include the newsletter from LinkedIn across into the blog content. And it's really simple. Obviously, I've got a full-time role. So I'm not in this to create a full-time content business in that sense. I'm there to basically make it easy to a certain, because it takes time to manage. So don't underestimate that. Whatever you do, if you're going to go down the content route, make sure you can continue it.
Yeah. And I think that, it is busy. And I think that LinkedIn is actually a great place to start at the newsletter, because even though it hasn't got the great tools as an external newsletter, but in terms of building an audience quickly, it's very easy, because then you immediately get all your connections just get told that you started a newsletter. And if people like some of your content, they'll subscribe, and it comes straight to their inbox and they get alerts. So I think it's been really great in terms of the newsletter.
It has for me. As I say, there's no commercial purpose of it, but it's just a way of communicating, and it's definitely, I get reasonable engagement. I feel like, I was probably one of the old school as well, that a lot of my LinkedIn, I do have a lot of followers now, but I used to get to know every single one of my connections. I didn't just randomly go out and just accept everybody. And also, I purge a lot of the connections. So if you're being in the same way as some of the sort of social media platforms can be very toxic, if you're making me feel bad, you're gone. I don't have time for it. I don't have time for people to be telling me I'm underperforming, I'm not doing enough, I could do better, I can be a better parent, business person, whatever. If you are not going to have some form of positivity in my life, then see ya.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a great attitude to have. I feel like, I think I've been definitely taking more of that stance recently, and it's been so much better for me. And I think you just get the right sort of people around you, which has been amazing.
I think it can change as well. It can change over time. So after I lost the business, I was at my most vulnerable in terms of, shall we say, emotional state. Yeah. So my Instagram went from following 400 or 500 accounts to following 150.
Nice.
And if you made me feel bad about anything, it's like, ow. I don't mind being challenged and educated, but if it's all about body image, money, everything else, then I don't have any time for it. Because actually, going back to probably the roots of Healthy Nibbles, it started because I thought, I don't want another family to go through somebody dying from a lifestyle-related cancer because of the crap that they've put in the body, and we all do it. Even the best of us who say we eat well all put crap in our body at some point. And I wanted to try and prevent somebody from going through that. And it's in the same way that I don't need to be I feel that I need to be strong for my daughter because she's social media age, poor thing. But also that I need to, it shows you when you lose somebody close how much life, genuine life.
Yeah.
And that was part of, what triggered Healthy Nibbles as well, was having that life in Kenya where I saw a massive juxtaposition between poverty and wealth. And you think, my goodness, we've actually got to count our blessings. We've got to really look at what we're doing and build that up, build that positivity, build that strength, that resilience, not just be blown away by money and beauty.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. So
very idealistic.
It is, but that's nice. And I like that. I like that a lot. And I feel like, that's a good note to end on, actually. I think it's a really nice note. I think you've been so amazing today, sharing so many things, and kind of been easy talking about what you went through. But I'm so glad to see how happy you are now. And it shows you that actually sometimes we have in our heads that we can never do something again. Like you said, never work for anyone. And I feel like that. But if you just embrace things and actually go for it, sometimes you'll be surprised and it can lead to wonderful things. Power of having an open mind.
Yeah, I would say ending on one thing that I have found the most impactful is realizing that you're on a journey, and that business as an individual entity is not the journey. Your journey is your life, and you realize where that takes you. And I think that has challenged me a lot in terms of what journey am I on, being the best that I can be at that moment in time with those around me. That's what kind of fuels me, and that's after, I was going to say give yourself a break, because that is after a bit of reflection.
Yeah. And I'm going to do that. I'm about to go on holiday and I'm about to have a break, so I'm going to do that and then have a bit of self-reflection while lying on a beach in Marrakesh.
Sounds beautiful.
Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.